you look into the history of the word crown and the royal crown, the word crown was derived from Anglo-French word called caroon, which is derived from Latin for corona. But the year that the word crown, was first established was in the year 1111.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
So we released our previous episode on March 13th, and within the days and weeks that followed, the synchronicity thread we were chasing at the end there has gone completely batshit crazy. I mean, the whole world has gone crazy in this time frame too. Everyone locked up in our private little cubes, trying not to overthink the fears of global pandemics and authoritarian power grabs. Obviously, the subject of the day is the coronavirus, and we pointed out in that last episode how corona literally means crown and ties into the overall theme of the wasteland and these rituals of the king's death and rebirth. Now, let me be clear. I did not see this pandemic coming. No one did. Well, maybe one person did. Okay, maybe a few people did. Maybe a lot of people did. Point is that most people, myself included, did not expect a complete reshaping of our lives and our judicial systems, our economic security, our relationship to the outside world, and the way we interact with others. I only mention how caught off guard I was right here up front because in today's episode we are going to talk about prophecy and predicting the future, and I want you to know I'm not claiming to be able to see shit. That is not my approach to this material, but I have to say, releasing a video showing the symbolic flare-up of the Lion King just days before the unexpected media phenomenon that was Tiger King feels like a direct bullseye, you sunk my battleship, nail on the head, metaphor of your choice. It's pretty damn specific. Right after, I go into great lengths to demonstrate why Trump is comparable to the Lion King. Suddenly, all over the internet, people are photoshopping Donald Trump's face onto the Tiger King. And then you realize this guy ran for president in 2016, furthering the symbolic equivalence between him and Trump.
I'm Joe Exotic, and don't forget, I am now stepping my foot in the ring to run for president. And this is all paid for by the committee of Joe Exotic Speaks for America.
What if I told you that this song that the Tiger King is playing at the end of his presidential campaign video, what if I told you that in 2011 at that press correspondence dinner that we spent so much time talking about last episode, what if I told you that's literally the song that Barack Obama takes the stage to that night?
The President of the United States.
The joke is that he's presenting his birth certificate and is therefore a real American, but that is the same night he announces himself as the Lion King. So, same song even, Obama as Lion King, and now in 2020, Trump as Tiger King. Wild synchronicities. There's a ton more, but I don't want this to overtake tonight's video since we've got other stuff to talk about. I'll just quickly remind you that I have been collecting all of these synchronicities laid out as a sort of scrolling post-it note timeline at thesyncbook.com/kings. At that link, you'll be able to read about 170 pages of a book that I was writing on this material, a book that remains unfinished, but I guess I should start tonight by telling you about a different unfinished book of mine. In 2007, a publisher approached me asking me to write a book about 2012 predictions, and they didn't care how little I knew about the subject. A lot of it was new research for me. Actually, the first time I was exposed to Terence McKenna's material was through special ordering his books through the New York City Public Library for this project. At some point, the publisher says he wants the book to focus on, quote, the end of the world. And after he put some pressure on me, I agreed with the caveat that I would present the end of the world as one of many possibilities for the future, arguing instead that I wanted to focus on this as a period of change and suggested a title like The End of the World as We Know It. A few more months into research and writing, he sends me a mock-up cover, which obviously took someone about 30 seconds to make, with huge letters spelling out, this is the actual cover that they sent me. Maybe this is illegal to share this? I don't know. This was the cover they sent me. After seeing that, I put my foot down and I left the project. It wasn't a total wash, however, as the research I did for it led me into some fascinating areas that I may not have been exposed to otherwise. I'd like to share some of that material with you tonight. Alright, are you ready? Good, because here we are. The Atlantic just announced that we have come to the end of the 9/11 era, that 2020, with the coronavirus and the global upheaval it has caused, that we've now entered some sort of new age. For our study with this series, looking at the post-9/11 era as it plays out up until the year 2020, again, I did not expect our series to get it so perfectly right on the nose there, but ours isn't the only method for measuring these periods of time or even predicting when they might come to an end.
We are living through, in a 67-year period that stretches from 1945 to 2012, a compressed version of a larger historical epoch, 4,306 years long, that also ends in 2012. And ahead of us lies the Gothic Renaissance, the European Enlightenment, the discovery of the Newtonian mechanics, the discovery of the New World. That all lies ahead of us. It all has to be compressed into the next 22 years of time. And that is what accounts for the crazy quality of modernity. It's what accounts for fads and fashions. You know, hemlines are rising and falling in a rhythm based on the rise and fall of empires millennia ago. And these things are as causally linked as the orbit of the Earth is linked to the sun.
That, of course, is Terence McKenna, the man who, in addition to all his scholarly work with botany and alchemy and psychedelics and a slew of topics, he was truly a polymath. He was also a very witty lecturer, proponent of the stoned ape theory, and he also very famously had a crazy idea, inspired by taking psychedelics in the rainforest, after which he proposed a mathematical model of measuring changes in time that spit out this 2012 end date. From the publication of his time wave data in 1975 up to his death in 2000, McKenna spent years writing and talking about the model from the perspective that he was confident that the pattern he discovered had some major significance. However, he could only speculate as to what the end date might mean. Again, it should be emphasized that he didn't have a singular prediction and that he speculated wildly. But he wasn't some doomsayer claiming the end was nigh. It wasn't till after his death and much closer to 2012 that his model became popularized and bastardized by New Age false prophets and fearmongers. Well, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with what time wave zero even is.
Before his death in 2000, McKenna noticed an unrecognized pattern in the 64 hexagrams of the I Ching. The 6 lines and 64 possible combinations can be expressed as a ratio of change in each hexagram and plotted on a graph. When McKenna mapped that graph over a timeline, he found intriguing correlations that matched all 4,000 years of recorded history. The 64 hexagrams repeat 64 times over history. McKenna called his theory time wave zero. The highs and lows of his I Ching graph seem to have accurately predicted the fall of the Roman Empire, the discovery of the New World, and the world wars of the 20th century. But the strangest thing of all was that McKenna's timeline came to an end on one specific date, December 21st, 2012.
It was later that McKenna discovered that the Mayan civilization ended its calendar at the point of 2012. He felt there was something truly prophetic about that date.
It might be worth clarifying the last point made there. McKenna's original time wave calculations gave him a slightly earlier date, still in 2012, but about a month earlier, in the middle of November. However, when he learned of the Mayan calendar, he basically says, oh, I'm probably tapping into the same thing they are, and McKenna figures these native people spent the entirety of their culture studying this, whereas I'm just figuring it out. I'm sure they're more accurate than me, and he shifts his time wave zero end date to match theirs. This should tell you a few things, namely that McKenna's concept of an end date was not only fluid and abstract, but also open to revision. It should also be noted that he's one of the few white academics to trust native intelligence enough to defer to their expertise. And we do know that something very specific and real did happen on December 21st, 2012, something the Mayans knew was going to happen.
Their calendar was incredibly precise, more accurate even than our own. Its interlocking timescales of lunar, solar, and planetary cycles could accurately predict a solar eclipse thousands of years into the future.
They were obsessed with time, synchronicity, and consciousness, and they spent like 1,000 years, going back to even previous civilizations, trying to put together a model of when this big transformation was going to take place.
Modern astronomers concur with the ancient Mayans. On December 21st, 2012, the Earth will be in exact alignment with the Sun and the center of the Milky Way galaxy, a galactic event that takes place once every 25,800 years. No one knows what effect this extraordinary alignment will have on the Earth, but the Mayans believed it would be dire.
It might be kind of like a crossing over of the kind of galactic equator. When you go below, south and north, magnetic currents will spin in opposite directions. It might be there's a kind of field effect reversal that takes place once you pass through this galactic equator.
Speaking of false New Age prophets, that was Daniel Pinchbeck speaking at the end there, a man who once tried to claim Terence McKenna's cultural status as psychedelic Renaissance man. After the passing of 2012 left him and his ilk holding the short straws, the only apocalypse they saw was the one that came for their careers. Nowadays, Pinchbeck is shyly, abashedly trying to shake off his Me Too scandal and the weirdness of his public apology letter. However, I've gotta say, the idea he proposes of crossing a galactic equator is a fascinating one, and looking back, he's a surprising voice of sanity and sobriety on that History Channel schlock doc I've been playing for you. Some additional context on that footage: I had to carefully edit and massage the only 2 minutes of any kind of real information out of 50 minutes of fear porn done in the style of Ancient Aliens. But I really wanted to use this video as a clip because I was handed this DVD with the book deal. They're like, hey, write a book on 2012. He was like, here, let this be your research. This History Channel episode. The rest of the episode sounds like this.
It is a doomsday that is foretold in the Mayan calendar. 2012. A date that is prophesied as the end of the world.
I don't like to say it, but something like limited nuclear war in 2008, 2009 kind of time frame.
If you had asked me a few months ago, I wasn't sure that talking about a 2012 apocalypse scare was going to connect with too many viewers in 2020. But man oh man, have I heard the phrases apocalypse and end of the world over and over the last few months. And while some of that was tongue-in-cheek, many of us felt an immense fear recently. Whether you are scared of getting sick from coronavirus, or 5G, or losing your job, or politicians grabbing unprecedented draconian powers, or having to work and be put at risk, or that a secret World War III had already started, or of Bill Gates and his forced vaccines, or losing a member of your family, whatever you are scared of, most of us have some worries and felt a good deal of anxiety over the last few weeks and months. Felt like the world, as we know it, our societal safety net, the common ground we all expect to be there every day, all of that was ending. The world was ending.
I mean, I have a saying, Rome falls 9 times an hour. And it's your job to be sensitive to this. You can feel it when it falls. You can feel the rise of Chaldea, the spread of the Slavic peoples, the burning of Çatalhöyük while you're vacuuming your apartment or having sex, all that stuff. That's cycling, those aren't your thoughts, those are the thoughts of the Gaian matrix as these resonances mesh and reflect and work their way against each other.
And here with the tantalizing idea of enlightenment, of awakening to an ascended point of view from which you are one with McKenna's Gaian matrix, or returning to the source, or evolving to fifth dimensional shifting consciousness, or whatever phrase you want to spin that as. This was how some New Age hucksters transformed McKenna's time wave into their version of the rapture.
That is all there is. All is all. Is. It is.
So half the people saying 2012 was going to be a fiery apocalypse, the other half saying it was a moment of human consciousness transcending itself, and the ghosts of McKenna laughing with the understanding that the latter would undeniably be perceived by the ego as the former. Regardless, this idea of an awakening of consciousness ties into another possibility that McKenna floated for what the 2012 date could mean. He speculated that it could be the moment that AI became self-aware.
Good morning, Dr. Chandra. This is Hal. I'm ready for my first lesson.
Let me read you a short passage from Invisible Landscape, the book where McKenna first posited these ideas. Quote, "Achievement of the zero state can be imagined to arrive in one of 2 forms. One is the dissolution of the cosmos in an actual cessation and unraveling of natural laws, a literal apocalypse. The other possibility hews more closely to the idea that concrescence, however miraculous it is still the culmination of a human process, a process of tool-making, which comes to a completion, the perfect artifact. In alchemical terms, the dream of a union of spirit and matter. Presumably, were such a hyperspatial tool/process discovered, in a very short time, it would entirely restructure life's experience of itself, of time, space, and of otherness. The appearance in normal space-time of a hyperdimensional body may be apocalypse enough." Now, that's McKenna writing in 1975, describing this kind of transformative technology to come at the end of his time wave. A union of spirit and matter, huh? When would you say the human race merged with their smartphones? When did that hyperspatial tool entirely restructure life's experience of itself, of time, space, and of otherness?
In 2001, we introduced the first iPod. And it didn't just change the way we all listen to music. It changed the entire music industry. Well, today, we're introducing 3 revolutionary products of this class. The first one is a widescreen iPod with touch controls. The second is a revolutionary mobile phone. And the third is a breakthrough internet communications device. So, 3 things. A widescreen iPod with touch controls, a revolutionary mobile phone, and a breakthrough internet communications device. An iPod a phone, and an internet communicator. An iPod, a phone. Are you getting it? These are not 3 separate devices. This is one device.
Is that video as crazy to you as it is to me, or am I just getting old? That is 13 years ago. That is a drop in the bucket of history. Could even Terence McKenna imagine that the perfect artifact, the culmination of a human process of toolmaking, would be made in sweatshops by prison labor, utilizing minerals mined by child slave laborers, sold to us through the most crass forms of materialism, and weaponized against us by making us assist in our own mass surveillance? Well, in 2001, we didn't just get 9/11 and all of its ripple effects. The turn of the millennium also gave us 3G, a precursor to the 5G technology currently dominating conspiracy headlines. But it was 4G, which dates to about 2011, coming in just before the end of the Mayan calendar and time wave 0, that brought us the digital age that we are about to leave. Personally, I think it's fascinating that we've sort of leveled up our connectivity in tandem with these other geopolitical turning points. But apparently, this tech has been progressing steadily each decade. Obviously, other technologies are progressing exponentially, and very real changes are happening that are creating a total reboot of cultural norms. And that comes with possibilities for technological breakthroughs that could benefit mankind, as well as the much more glaring threat of tech being misused by psychopaths to control us. Looking into the surveillance state feels like staring into the abyss of every nightmare and bad trip I've ever experienced. It is dark, it is deep, and it is mythological in scale and scope. Looking around at the sneak peek version of a technocratic, hellish dystopia, I can tell you it is a future I don't want any part of. Deepfakes are getting really good. Combine that with our lost ability to tell real news from fake news, and you've got the perfect recipe of confusion and instability that dictators thrive on. Throw coronavirus into the mix, and even if it is a totally naturally occurring pandemic, meaning even if there is no conspiracy aspect to its presence whatsoever, the way that the most horrible and powerful of politicians and billionaires have jumped on it as an opportunity to increase their wealth and power, as well as to increase our level of surveillance and decrease our level of democracy, well, again, as I said, this is nightmare fuel. I mean, they deployed the robot dogs that in my mind are like the mascots for the worst case scenario here. Like, I remember reading Fahrenheit 451 when I was younger and thinking the robot dog that chases him was such a silly idea. But then as soon as Boston Dynamics started showing videos of these things, I understood all too well. Now, as a researcher of synchronicity, technology also throws another variable at me. The classic example of you think of a friend you haven't spoken to in a decade and the phone rings and then, oh my god, that's crazy, what are the odds, ... Well, now I get ads for things I think about or think about things I get ads about. Whatever it is, there are many days where the algorithm feels just too damn accurate. It's maddening, and I know there are companies trying to get inside my head, but I also know that synchronicity is a very real thing. I hate that I ever have to question if a technological synchronicity is real or manufactured, but it is a concern of mine. This is another reason why it's so important to have a connection with nature. Hey, Terence McKenna may have said a bunch of out there shit, but I'll trust his Gaian matrix over Jeff Bezos' matrix any day. I appreciate that he stressed a connection with nature to get a sense of what life, real life, feels like, what things smell like, all the things we can't get in virtual spaces. But I also appreciate that he knew technology was not just this cancer, but that it could be used as an extension of that Gaian matrix. Rather than a tool to destroy it, we can infuse our works and our deeds with humanity. I mean, I love this technology that allows me to speak to you right now and make these videos that I love making. And I also know that just as we infuse our technology with the human spirit, it would also seem that we can't help but infuse our artwork with the future. I told you that I don't come to this material from the perspective of prediction, but that doesn't mean I can ignore the non-linear phenomenon of synchronicity. Just as in our first episode, we covered a slew of media that seemed to predict 9/11, in just the last 2 months, we are already seeing a wave of blank predicts coronavirus videos and memes. Right away, folks noticed a similarity between a real-life Shanghai-based Biological Laboratories logo and that from the Resident Evil video game series, where this is the logo used by a pharmaceutical company that turns everyone into zombies. Then people noticed that the movie Tangled has the character quarantined in the kingdom of Corona. David Plate made a good video on that. Jordan Barty made a video showing the coronavirus predicted by the new Tool album. JJ Draw made a great sync video looking at the 1995 Keanu Reeves film Johnny Mnemonic. We got The Simpsons, of course, showing citizens demanding a cure from an Asian flu outbreak coupled with murder hornet stand-ins. And then there's this shit from the Dead Zone TV series.
We know it acts like a virus. It causes high fever and respiratory distress. Tracking and treating a mysterious outbreak like this would take the CDC months.
Anyone who hasn't been exposed already needs to wear a mask.
China. Isn't that where flu viruses come from? Yeah. A lot of viruses come from there. International flight to China? That's no coincidence. Whatever it is, it originated in China. How long is it going to take? Well, it took 34 days to isolate the coronavirus that caused SARS, and that's fast.
I'm authorizing a quarantine on everyone who's come in contact with a symptomatic person. And the enzyme this virus is when they were using
So the chloroquine. This is it. This is your virus.
I'm sorry, but there's no cure for that. Chloroquine, that's an anti-malarial drug.
No. Listen, it suppresses the enzymes. What happened? We started everyone on chloroquine, stopped the thing dead in its tracks. Now, the CDC would have figured it out eventually, but not in time.
Most recently, folks have brought 2012 back into the mix of all this coronavirus foreshadowing material by re-examining one of the creepier aspects of the 2012 Olympic opening ceremonies. You got hospital beds and nurses and Grim Reapers and oh shit, that do look like the models we've seen of COVID. That is just visually a very compelling synchronicity, and I can see why so many conspiracy theorists have pointed to it. But having lived through the era where the 2012 Olympics were themselves seen as the conspiracy, like, if you weren't paying attention at that point, it would be difficult to convey how hard people focused on the 2012 Olympics as like a New World Order masterstroke or endgame. And here we are, 8 years later, stuck in the same circular narrative of false predictions. So let's look at the Olympics. What did happen? Well, for starters, they recreated Glastonbury Tor, associated with Avalon and the burial site of King Arthur, which for me has always felt like a continuance of the King Kill motifs we looked at last episode. Again, a big global ritual using the exact same imagery and archetypes. Out into this Arthurian and Druidic ritual scene, a young boy recites William Blake's Jerusalem, which in many people's minds sort of confirmed the internet theory that the 2012 Olympic logo secretly encoded the word Zion. They really went all out. I would even argue that they went overboard with stuffing these Olympic Games full of specific symbolic allusions. It was ridiculous. I think of it almost like the culmination of that era of pop culture conspiracy hype. Lady Gaga covering her eye, MK Ultra everything. Did Jay-Z just say he's a Mason? All that sort of stuff. And then they announced the official song of the 2012 Olympics, and I suddenly knew that the organizers of these Olympic Games were laughing their asses off watching everyone scramble to figure them out. The official song of the 2012 Olympic Games was performed by Muse, a band I truly enjoy from time to time, although this song's Survival is pretty fucking lame. If you're not familiar with them, they were writing songs like Ruled by Secrecy and Exopolitics, and a song straight up called MK Ultra. They name-checked Bluebeam and oh so many conspiracy classics. The band appeared on Alex Jones's show as sympathetic to the info war, and they got some pushback in the British press for promoting the work of David Icke.
I actually heard about you through listening Coast to Coast with George Norrie. I heard you getting interviewed on there, and that's where I first came across you and your work. And then I went on to Google Video and watched some of your films like Terror Storm, and it really kind of opened my eyes to things which I kind of felt, I kind of had like an instinct in me that kind of told me something wasn't quite right with the world, something wasn't quite right with the news media and the way it presents information to us, and seeing some of your programs really has sort of shed some light onto what I kind of felt was going on, and I think it's really time for people to face up to these things.
Well, I agree. Give us your take on 9/11 and 7/7.
Well, I agree with your theory on false flag operation. Whether or not it's completely made to happen or whether it's allowed to happen, I'm not quite sure as to which of those two it is, but I think there's definitely a lot of evidence, a lot of questions that need answered.
So they were, I don't know, I don't want to call it a shtick, but let's just say they were very much associated with conspiracy theories for many years. They were known for that for years prior to the Olympics. People had also been zeroing in on the 2012 games since at least 2007, 2008, so 4 or 5 solid years of build-up to what is essentially the Conspiracy Olympics. And then you hire a bunch of conspiracy theorists to be your brand ambassadors? It's a big fuck you or a big fucking joke. But I knew from that announcement, as soon as Muse signed on, I knew that the 2012 Olympics would come and go as another failed apocalypse. And I was one of the lucky ones. Not everyone got the joke. While I know most people associate 2012 with Terence McKenna, I can't think about 2012 without thinking about Rick Clay. Rick was the one who did a lot of the work that would become so foundational once everyone else began researching 2012 theories, and particularly the focus on the 2012 Olympics and the number 1111 and so much stuff like that. He was into symbolism and synchronicity, and I wish he were alive to see that Elon Musk just named his child A12.
And so this main road that cuts through the Olympics 2012 site, which is called the East Cross Road, is also known as the A12 Road. Now there's hundreds of A roads in Britain, and so what are the chances that of all the roads that cross through it were an A12 road, a Pyramid 12 road? Do you see where I'm coming from with it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Very interesting.
It's pretty strange that one road, this is what I'm saying, coincidence is this load of rubbish that this is coincidence. It's not coincidence whatsoever.
No.
In my mind, Rick is a cautionary tale. Look, I didn't know the man. I'm not feigning an emotional reaction to his death in particular, but I think I knew his mindset. I spent years spinning my wheels on this material, seeing larger and larger connections, feeling completely untethered at times. I'm watching many of you experience this now with coronavirus conspiracies. It sucks to experience it, and it sucks to watch people experiencing it. I know how hard this can be, and then I look at Rick Clay, who, even with his positivity and brightness, something he saw got to him. By exploring these topics, we are entering some dark headspaces. Everyone uses the term going down the rabbit hole, right? But they don't warn you what it's like down there. If you're not careful, you can get caught running in circles, chasing your tail in a long line of maniacs. And not everyone you meet will be friendly. Users and manipulators are waiting in the shadows to prey upon all of those disoriented souls who just found their world turned upside down. Rick took his own life pretty soon after his blog and research took off, and I'm sure there were many pressures that came from the sudden spotlight. But as I watch history repeating itself, I want to hear about the next Rick Clay, the next exciting researcher, but I don't want to hear about their tragic demise. That reminds me, obviously doing an episode on Terence McKenna, I wanted to talk about psychedelics, but I ended up feeling like it was one topic too many for this episode. I'd just like to say, with changes in legality and accessibility, please be careful. I'm mostly pro-psychedelics and mostly pro-conspiratorial thinking, but they can be rough on their own, let alone if you start mixing them. I need y'all to take care of yourselves and take care of each other. It's okay to take a break from all this. I promise you that the New World Order, as well as the Infinite Mindscape, will both be waiting for you. It's fine if you need to step away and collect yourself. I promise it is not a failure. Nurturing yourself and your mental health is a heroic dose of self-care. I told you about my experience with the book publisher asking me to, quote, scare people into buying books. And oh man, will that experience forever inform and color my approach to all of this material. When I ask myself why Rick Clay isn't with us today, when I ask myself how many others had the rug pulled out from under them so some douchebag in a Manhattan office could make a few extra bucks, well, the blame has to be placed squarely at the feet of every person who sowed fear and discord. All the doomsayers and the profiteers, the history channels and the star seeds, the ones who sold apocalypse and the ones who sold salvation. When I look back at the 2012 hucksterism, I realize how alive and well that manipulation is today, where alternative media is shamefully skewed and manufactured through the same old tactics. Pinchbeck tried to sell us 2012 as the return of Quetzalcoatl, the Mesoamerican god returning at the end of the Mayan calendar. But instead of Q the Flying Serpent, we got QAnon. Zenor from Group Name for Grape Juice wrote, quote, after the failure of 2012 to mark an obvious and dramatic turning point in history, and faced with the heightened ridicule and taunting from the materialists and skeptoids, many conspiracy theorists became entirely antagonistic to anything smacking of mysticism and the New Age. They had been duped. They had danced blindly behind the Pied Pipers and had very nearly fallen off the cliff. They had been made fools of, victims of yet another tentacle of cultural Marxism. Never again. It was time to become hard. Now, I don't agree with Zenor completely here, in the sense that I don't think there was an outright rejection of the mystical thinking that took over the conspiracy world leading up to 2012. Rather, I would point to remnants of that mindset being found in the meme magic of 2016. But overall, yeah, I think the alt-right was only able to seize the scene because of this crash and burn. Between the dashed idealism of 2012, as well as the power vacuum created by a slew of popular voices getting wiped out by their inaccurate predictions, the stage was set for a new form of conspiracy culture. And that will be the focus of our final episode.